Welcome, everyone, and good evening, or good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be spinning on Earth. I am Gretchen Bickert, and on behalf of the entire Slooh team, welcome to our member star party for the March Equinox. So, coming up either late tonight or early tomorrow morning, our planet will reach one of the most remarkable moments in its annual journey, the March Equinox. And by the way, what we're watching here is a live replay of the Slooh Solar Telescope. So pretty cool. Got that lovely sunspot right in the center. Okay, well, back to why we're here, and that is the March Equinox, right? So it's the moment when day and night are held in perfect balance, when the sun rises due east and sets in the west for every single person on the earth. So whether you're in the northern hemisphere welcoming spring, or you're in the southern hemisphere settling into autumn, it's going to be the March equinox. So the sky is also giving us an extra gift. We are just one day from the new moon. So the moon has stepped aside, and what that means is that the sky overhead right now is as dark and deep and rich as it gets. So stars that are usually hidden from view, they're out in full force tonight. And so here's what we have planned for this evening. Our astronomy educator, Keith Wazaleski, is here, and he's going to open us up with the science and tell us what exactly is happening in the sky tonight, what the equinox means, and why this particular dark sky is so special. Then our president of Slooh, Dr. Emma Kane Loudon, will take us into the wonder of what a truly dark sky reveals, right? So, and she has a little something extra to share that connects tonight to a very exciting moment that's happening tomorrow. After that, our cultural astronomy expert Milton is going to take us to ancient Mesoamerica and South America, to the Mayan, to the Inca, and those civilizations that built their entire world around moments just like this. And then Keith is going to close us out with some of the most fascinating folk traditions that have grown up around the equinox, some of which might actually surprise you. Okay, now let's get into the science of what's happening tonight. I'm so pleased to welcome our astronomy educator, Keith. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, Gretchen. Here we are again, another equinox. Again, the March equinox. We don't call it the spring equinox anymore because we know that a lot of our Slooh members are in the southern hemisphere and it is not spring there for them. For them, it's actually fall. I'm glad you pulled up the image of the sun here. I just wanted to take a look at it because we think of the equinox as a solar event, but the sun isn't really actually doing anything. It's the Earth that's the key player here as it orbits around the sun. I want to take a look at some slides. I promise you, today we are going to move in a little bit different direction towards the end of the star party. We're going to have some fun, but before we do that, we have to look at some axial tilt slides. Here we go. I know, everybody's favorite. So this is what happens with the Earth in its orbit around the sun. We talk about the tilt. Tilted from what? If we drew a line between the sun and the Earth and we're able to create a plane, the North Pole or the axis of the Earth is not perpendicular. It's not at a right angle to it. It's tilted at about 23.5 degrees. What happened to my feed? Let me go back to my
Oops,
sharing.
sorry, just keep sharing.
It's okay. Let me go back. So here we are again. So we have the Earth tilted from that plane between the Earth and the Sun at about 23.5 degrees in my diagram here. If you notice, the North Pole is pointed in a particular direction. That is what we call the pole star. That is Polaris. That is a very specific region in the sky. And as the Earth makes its orbit around the sun, it is always pointed in that direction. It's always pointed towards the pole star. It's easy for me because I have a north-facing window and Polaris is actually right outside. So the Earth is always pointing in that direction. What about the South Pole? Well, that's also pointed in a specific direction too, but we don't have a star in the South Pole. We have a region in the constellation of Octans that the South Pole is pointing at. But anyway, that's what happens. The Earth is tilted, and because of that, we have periods of time where the northern hemisphere is angled towards the sun, and we have times where the southern hemisphere is angled towards the sun. That's not what's happening today, but I think it's easier to understand what's happening if we look at that first. So we're just leaving this direction that we were in, where the southern hemisphere was angled towards the sun. It was summer there. The northern hemisphere was angled away from the sun. The Earth, again, is not tilting. It's always pointing towards that. The axis is always pointing towards that pole star. But because of the orbit of the Earth around the sun, that position is going to change. This is what we're looking forward to, where the northern hemisphere is angled towards the sun and the southern hemisphere is angled away from the sun. This is observable from space. We can see it here on the left. We have the southern hemisphere angled towards the sun, tilted towards the sun, the northern hemisphere tilted towards the sun again. It's just the nature of the way that the orbit of the Earth around the sun occurs. The Earth is not moving. Sometimes you'll see diagrams where the Earth shifts. There's no shift. If you experiment with this at home, I always like to use my fist as the sun, my other fist as the Earth. As you move in orbit around the sun, there are times where the northern hemisphere is going to be angled, the southern hemisphere is going to be angled towards the sun. There is no tilting of the Earth. It just happens by nature of the fact that we do have that 23.5-degree angle towards the sun. These are not ISS images. These are actually from the Apollo missions. The ISS, if the Earth were a beach ball, the ISS is very close to the surface of the Earth, only about a quarter of an inch in that scale. So these are from probably from the moon missions. I think these are from one of the Apollo missions. And we just happen to see that southern hemisphere pointed towards the Earth that summer, in the southern hemisphere, winter in the north, and then we see the reverse there. So let's look at some globes. You know my famous globe diagrams. This again is the position that we're moving away from very clearly here. Why is Australia pictured? Because the person who made these slides is Australian. Uh, we have the southern hemisphere tilted towards the sun, northern hemisphere tilted away. This is where we are today. We are moving out of that relationship. So right now, we are kind of face on to the sun. Neither the northern or southern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. We have kind of both halves of the globe that are equally positioned towards the sun. I think of it as a halfway point. We'll see this in March. We'll also see this again in September during the September equinox. So from the Latin equal night, equal day, you can see that from, imagining the way the globe is positioned, that we're not going to have shorter or longer nights. We're going to have pretty much days and nights that are relatively equal, not just today, but for the next few days until we start to move into that direction where the days will start to get longer than they are today. And let's not forget that the days have been getting longer since the December solstice. A lot of times people think, oh, the nights are getting shorter. No, by the time we reach the December solstice, the days have already been getting longer. We've just reached today that point where day and night is more or less equal and will continue to get longer, at least the days will, uh, as we move closer and closer to that June solstice. Southern Hemisphere, the exact opposite. Their days are getting shorter and their nights are getting longer. Better for astronomy because you have a longer night. We're moving into a period of shorter and shorter nights. And as we move into the summer, your actual viewing period will greatly decrease. Okay. Just again, why does this happen? Why do the days longer and shorter? Northern hemisphere, we don't receive as many light rays as the southern hemisphere does. And then in June, that is reversed. We get the bulk of the sun's rays, and the southern hemisphere does not. So I think that's my one other thing. We talk about the equinox. Again, it's often referred to as a solar event. It's not really the sun doing anything. It's the Earth that's moving around the sun in its orbit. Today, the sun will be directly above the Earth's equator and will gradually move, or at least appear to move, towards the Tropic of Cancer, which just happens to be 23.5 degrees, which is the same degree uh, as the tilt of the Earth. That's its point of latitude. And from that point, it will gravitate back towards the equator and then move into the southern hemisphere. The equinox is, again, that equal point. When we move into that northern hemisphere, a lot of times that's not just called the June solstice. Sometimes you'll hear it called the northern solstice because that's where the sun appears to go. With that said, I am going to take a quick break. Gretchen, do we have any questions or comments in the chat before I look at some other things? What have you got for
No,
me?
not yet, but this is fascinating. You know, Keith, you and I have shared these star parties on the equinox many times, and I've got to tell you that, it may seem like boring to have your slides out there, but every time you show this, I'm reminded of, those the special things that actually have to come together to make this really spectacular event. So super cool, and you just have a lovely way of delivering it that makes it exciting each time. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks. So we do have some more things to look at. It's an event that occurs out in space. It's a moment in time, and I don't know if it was listed on the Slooh website, the actual time of equinox, but it is a moment in time. Much like many of these events, just like a planetary oppositions or a full moon, new moon that we're going to talk about, these are moments in time too. But the equinox does have observable phenomena here on Earth. So when we look at something like Stonehenge, this is my Stonehenge diagram, uh, we know that the position of the sun is going to rise and set at different points depending on what time of the year it is. Now, I haven't checked the attendee list here, but I know that Mr. Paul Cox, who lives very close to Stonehenge, in fact, will probably be there tomorrow for the for the equinox, would be able to tell us that the sun is going to rise and set in a very specific point. So, in December during the solstice, because the sun is in that southern hemisphere, we will see the sun rise and set in the southeast and southwest. We hear the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. That really only happens around the time of the equinox. During the solstices, which we are leaving that time period about 3 or 4 months ago, the sun was rising in the west to south, rising in the southeast, setting the southwest. I talk about this because, again, it's observable. You can build a Stonehenge at home by simply marking the position, the southernmost position of where the sun rises and sets. Again, just like I have a northern window, I have an east to west window here too. I get to see the sunrise. And in the wintertime, I don't see it because it's too far in the south. Today, uh, when I watched the sun, it was pretty much dead east and will set in the dead west. Again, we live on an east to west street. This is observable. So if you haven't plotted this out at home yet, before in the past, it's something I encourage you to do. It's just a nice thing to help us stay grounded and connected to what's happening with the sun relative to the earth, to watch this rise in the east, setting in the west. And then as we move into summertime, at least up here, or moving into the June solstice, we will see the sun rise in the northeast. It's moving out into that other direction, setting in the northwest. And it's a very, very neat way to track the seasons. Very simple thing to observe here, regardless of where you live. Another thing that happens, I'm not going to look at this diagram, I'm going to look at this, is the height of the sun in the sky. So as we move out of the December solstice, that is the point where the sun is lowest, at least for us in the northern hemisphere. It will move to its highest point in the sky, which will reach in the June solstice. Right now at the equinox, it's about at its midway point. Again, we certainly don't recommend that you look at the sun, but the ancients certainly understood this idea of where the sun's rising and where it's setting, And they certainly understood the idea of the height of the sun in the sky simply by marking it against trees and later against monuments that they have built where the sun will not rise past a certain point and will not set below a certain point based upon where it is that you live. Okay, I don't think I have anything else with this. I also want to mention one other thing before we turn it over here, and that is the difference of types of equinox. You know, we'll hear about the astronomical uh, equinox, which is what we're kind of looking at today. But there's also a meteorological equinox, which has more to do with where you live in terms of temperate climate and the way the climate changes and growing seasons. We talk a lot about how people use the equinox and solstice and that kind of thing to help determine when it is they're going to plant, when they're going to harvest, when they're going to do these kind of things. Uh, that changes depending on where you live. So here in the Northeast, we had snow this week. So if you used and relied solely on the equinox, you would be planting way too early. In Florida, however, they have kind of a Caribbean type climate, an equatorial climate. They never really even have winters, so they can plant year round. So it's important to understand the difference between what we're talking about today, the astronomical equinox, and this idea of meteorological uh, understanding of the way the seasons change and how that affects what we do with respect to that. I'm going to take another break here. And Gretchen, I know you had something you wanted to bring up, but I'm going to close out
Oh,
of this first.
well, I
And
don't want you to run away yet until you talk about this new moon. It's
yeah,
lost in
we'll, we'll
between.
do we'll do new moon 101. Yeah, it's the opposite of the full moon. So this is the point where the moon comes between the earth and the sun. This is also a moment in time. It's actually when the sun and the moon share the same right ascension, technical term, but it's a line that we can sort of draw in the sky. And if we have the same up and left and right and the same up and down, we have what we had about a month ago, which was a solar eclipse. We don't have that this new moon when it's kind of a rare event every 6 months or so. We have some type of solar eclipse. The new moon is important this month because it is the new moon for a number of faith traditions. It is the new moon for the month of Nisan, which is also the month in which Easter occurs. So it's the month of Passover. The new moon begins Passover. And of course, Passover and Easter will be the first full moon after the beginning of the month of Nisan, which I guess began yesterday. So it's important in several different ways. The new moon also important because the skies are darker. We don't have, we think of light pollution. We talk about this all the time. There is natural light pollution, one of which comes from the moon. So when you have a full moon, it is not the best time to have the telescopes pointed at remote, distant objects where we need to gather a lot of light. The new moon is a time where we want to look at those very faint, very distant objects and test the limits of the Slooh telescopes by looking at the fainter, more distant objects. You don't have to do it just around the new moon. Don't forget the moon, as it moves around the Earth, will set just after the sun does. So the nights are still very long and will be for the next couple of days. It's really when we get to first quarter moon that we start to have some issues with the sun. And also with the equinox, we will lose the Milky Way. So it's not just the moon. We will also lose some of the other, not light pollution so much, but some of the dust lanes that inhibit our ability to see a lot of what's out there. In space, we turn our attention instead towards the galaxies that we see in the constellations that are appearing in the sky now. Right. That's my new moon
Awesome. I
primer.
love that. And what is going to happen with the Orion Nebula with spring? Are we going to lose that? Am I going to see that at night? Am I going to see Orion? What's going to be happening there?
I think, yeah, that's scheduled. We don't have telescopes tonight. As the Earth makes its way through the celestial sphere, objects that appear close to the sun will eventually be behind the sun and they will no longer be visible. That's what's going to happen to Orion. But the flip side is that objects that were not visible will reappear in the night sky. And like I said, this is an ideal time to get into Gemini, Leo, come with Berenices, and into Virgo, where we have this very rich galaxy region because we don't have the dust lanes of the Milky Way there. So it's kind of like looking out a window where we get to look beyond our own galaxy and look out into deep space where a lot of these galaxies and galaxy clusters are. So very interesting. Or Milton said, yes, Orion has migrated to the southern hemisphere. Not all constellations do that. Some constellations are only visible from the northern hemisphere, some only from the southern. Those that are sort of play tag with the equator will become visible in either one. So
Awesome. Well,
that's
I love
really
that. So we not only have this lovely turning of the seasons, but also the sky is changing its view for us, what we get to see. So that's really cool. Well, thank you so much, Keith, and we'll visit Keith again later in the show. But now I'd like to hand things over to Dr. Emma Kane Loudon, who's got something important and beautiful to share about the new moon and the dark skies and what they mean, along with lots of other great stuff. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so fun to join these star parties. It is one of my favorite parts of this job. And thank you, Keith, for the overview of what's going on in the night sky right now and why this moment matters to us from an astronomical perspective and how that relates to culture. I'm excited to keep diving into all of that. I want to zero in on what Keith was talking about with the new moon and why the new moon is important. The new moon is our darkest sky of every month. It's the best time to observe anything in the night sky, just from a pollution of the brightness of the moon that otherwise is caused perspective. And that deep, dark, moonless sky is something that used to be available to every human being on Earth every single night. For most of human history, that sky was a constant companion. People were able to navigate by it, tell time with it, find meaning in it, and feel connected to something vast and very enduring through it. Tonight, and in general on Slooh, we have a glimpse of what that sky looks like. And in places where you have the ability to go out tonight and really see what that moonless sky looks like, if there's not too much light pollution, I encourage you to take a moment to really appreciate it. Next month is Astronomy Month, and there's International Dark Sky Week. So at Slooh, we're really going to be focusing in on what are dark skies, why do they matter for many different purposes, and how they are a part of our natural heritage. The ability to really stand outside and see the Milky Way, to be able to catch that meteor streaking across the darkness, and to feel small is a human experience that has shaped art and religion and science and culture. And as Milton will talk about specifically later, some of the ancient civilizations of the Americas. Slooh really is about trying to reconnect people with that experience, and we do that through our platform, obviously, but also through trying to encourage all of our members to engage in advocacy around dark skies. So as we enter next month and prepare for International Dark Sky Week, I really encourage you to go to Dark Sky International's website and take their pledge, and in particular, look at their light pollution resources and think about getting your home dark sky certified. It's a quick, easy set of checklist things that you can do on your home that you can encourage your students to do on their homes, and then submit certification that you've done it, and then they'll send you a sticker that you can display in your window and say that this house is dark sky certified. If you're interested in more conversations about the dark sky, not next Friday, 2 Fridays from now, Friday, April 3rd, we're going to have our first Friday's Community Star Party, which is our monthly gathering of the Slooh community from around the world. That's really action oriented. And we're going to have the CEO of the Dark Sky International organization there to talk with us about International Dark Sky Week, resources, everything from books to pledges to advocacy work, and ways to get involved in protecting this night sky that everybody on Slooh already cares about. Also connecting us to the real world, I would be remiss to not point out that tomorrow, or I guess tonight technically, Project Hail Mary is released in theaters. It's, for those who haven't read the book or haven't heard about the movie, it's a long-awaited film adaptation of Andy Weir's novel, starring Ryan Gosling as Ryland Grace, who is a scientist and sent on a mission to save Earth as the sun starts to die. It's one of my favorite science fiction books, and I'm very picky about science fiction. And really am looking forward to seeing it and being a part of this cultural phenomenon around this exploration and kind of questioning about what does it mean to be human. If you want to connect to the movie on Slooh, you can schedule a mission to 40 Eridani, which I won't spoil why that particular system matters to the book and to the movie because it's a pretty fun resolution and reason. But that's a way to connect right on Slooh to this fun thing happening in theaters. And if you share your observation of 40 Eridani on Slooh, we're going to be collecting all of those, as well as reviews of the movie and book from our Slooh members. I already encourage you to mark your calendars for April 3rd. So with that, I will hand it back to Gretchen.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That was fantastic. I'm super excited to check out the movie, and I did put a link in the chat for the pledge for Dark Sky International. And I've been following Dark Sky International for quite some time now. I'm really, really fortunate that the International Dark Sky Museum and observatory and center is going to be built like less than 30 miles from my home. So I'm excited to be part of that, and I super appreciate dark skies and saving our dark skies, and super excited for your community meeting that we're having, the gathering, First Fridays community meeting on the 3rd, because that way we can learn so much more. And I have met or not personally, but I've been to many conferences and talks with Ruskin Hartley, and he's just fascinating and a wealth of knowledge when it comes to our dark skies and why it's important to save them. So really, so great. Thank you so much for spending your time and being here with us. I super appreciate it.
Of course, and I just put the home lighting assessment in the chat also. If you
Oh,
want to get ahead, we're going to try and have as many Slooh members as possible complete that during International Dark Sky Week. So sharing that with everybody here.
oh, cool. All right, you guys, get on that. Anyways, these dark skies that was talking about and I was mentioning, they weren't just a luxury for the civilizations that came before us. They were absolutely essential, right? The Mayan and the Inca, the sky was their calendar. It was their religion. It was their map. And we have Milton here, otherwise known as Milton, as Mr. V by his students, is here. Milton, come and join us and tell us more about the Inca and civilization. Milton, are you there with us? Oh, let's hope he is. Sometimes.
Absolutely.
There
Yes, I
he is.
am. And thank you for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. I've got your slides up all queued and ready to go.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to this. And let me take you around time this time, back into, the time in which the Maya or the Inca were looking at the same skies we're looking at tonight. Equinox, right? For them is when the whole thing went into new balance. It's interesting to look at the skies from that perspective because we have to understand that they had a different kind of astronomy. We call it horizon astronomy. It was something that, for them was the only thing they had. So, when we look at the sky that way, we have to kind of patiently wait until things, align, for example. If you hit the next slide, you will see, for example, that the sun rose at that particular point during a spring equinox in Uñatambo. Tambo in local language means the place to rest. So this is where the sun rests, right? And this is where, all of a sudden everything, like Keith said, the night and the day will have equal amount of time. They didn't use hours like we use, but they realized that, yeah, there was the same amount of light and the same amount of darkness during these few days. And so this is what we call horizon astronomy. We especially mark special points where the sun or the planets, etc., align with the rest of the world. And that relationship between our world and the cosmos was what, we could capture studying archaeology and everything. Let's see now slide number 5, if you allow me. Exactly. And if you hit the next, you will see the stucco facade that this building used to have. And you can go back and forth, yes, to show everybody how incredible that was. Now, the elements have destroyed that, but as archaeologists have really, studied the minimal differences to kind of reconstruct what you see there. And you can see, for example, in the middle, the sun god for the Mayan. And, specifically when the sun rose on the equinox, it hit the middle door, going straight to the back of the building and lighting a special chamber where they would probably have monuments to the sun. And when the solstice, time came around, you had the sun coming through any one of those two windows to the left and right. So this kind of architecture is really interesting because it has survived even today. A lot of our architecture, is aligned to the sun. For example, where I live is a tropical place, but you don't want your house to be aligned completely towards sunrise or sunset because that would be too hot. We have to align it specifically where, our ancestors used to do that to basically keep the house a little cooler. So that's architecture that has survived the time in this sense. So a lot of South America likes to build around that time, right? Let's go on to the next one where I will show you especially the map of Palenque. And you can see right in the middle the equinox entrance. It's pointing at the little summit where the sun would climb every year. And then it'll go, as we heard Keith saying, from north-south, let's say for the winter solstice or to the summer solstice in an never-ending sequence, let's say, that for them was so important. Now, going into what you suggested, uh, the Mayan and the Aztec later could predict some of these things happening, and they built, towards that end. So let's hit the next button, please. Tomorrow, the eyes of the world will be focused on Chichen Itza in the Mayan Peninsula. Chichen Itza was one of the biggest Mayan cities, and during the empire phase of the Maya, buildings got a lot bigger, their astronomy got a lot more accurate, and they developed enough knowledge to build what you will see in the next slide that we call. Exactly. We call this building the Kukulcan Palace, right? In Spanish, they call it El Castillo or the castle. But this structure is massive. I invite everybody to try to book, trips to the Mayan Peninsula and try to go to, Chichen Itza because you're going to be absolutely marveled about these constructions. Now, something else is, happening tomorrow when the snake that you see on one of those walls comes climbing down. Okay, the Maya built this whole structure to show the world how their god Kukulkan will come from above and into the ground. And there's this little video I prepared for you. Now you can see how the snake is starting to form. And they could emulate even the, undulating body of the snake. because at the bottom of this, they specifically carved the head of the snake, right? So you can see how the body starts forming, and that is the magic that they wanted to create with such massive structures. So even the borders or the corners are rounded so that the shadow cast on the wall will show everybody the undulating body of the snake. Kukulkan is a god that they believed in. Kukulkan would bring from the sky the water that is necessary for survival and the water that is necessary for crops, right? So they really worshipped this god, and they had a lot of faith into that. You must remember that in this kind of territory, they depended a lot on subterranean waters that would fill up with every season, and that was important to keep the population alive. So you can see how, uh, in this case, the earth and the sky have to play a very important role in their lives. Otherwise, the whole civilization would just disappear. And it did when things did not work that way, when there was a too long dry season that they couldn't anticipate. But what they did anticipate were many, many celestial factors. In my next slide, I will show you, and I will try to give you a little bit of Mayan calendar, sequence. Here is what we call the Tolkien. The Tolkien is a series of 260 days that they believed in. And in the inner circle, the smaller of these circles, you will see numbers. And anybody watching this right now can really start counting like we would do in kindergarten. One is one dot, two dots, etc., etc. Five becomes a line, and six logically becomes a line and a dot, etc., etc., until you arrive to number 13. Okay, so that was the inner circle. Now, what this inner circle would do is circulate inside, and it would form different days of the month, let's say. So, for example, if you were asking me what's today, I would ask you to go to 11, two lines and one dot, and align it to Can. Can is a very special place in this calendar because Can means a day that is very good for planting, not only seeds. Okay, so if you're, for example, if you're transplanting a plant in a pot, or you're planting any seeds in your garden, but it's also good to plant ideas or plans in your life. Anything you plant today, they would tell you, is likely to prosper. But it's also a part of a bigger circle than you can see here. It's a circle that is called the long count. And in the long count, we hit, the very next line that says that we have to also be careful planning because we don't want to be tricked in that case. So to the Maya, today is a day of flourishing, a day in which you can make lots of plans and be sure that they will bloom. And also, it's a day where you have to be careful because you want to take careful steps towards your plans, right? So that's what the Maya tells us for today. And tomorrow will be 12 and Chikchin, if I believe, and that's another story. That's a totally different story. But still, we are in the zone where plants will bloom and there is balance. And it's incredible how the Maya could, even with their calendar, anticipate that the equinox would bring balance to the rest of the cosmos. This idea of the calendar was quickly adopted by the Aztec. In my next slide, you'll see how the Aztec really developed this even a step further. This is the big sunstone right now sitting on a wall in a museum in the city of Mexico. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be a table around which, people would look around. This was their smaller version of this calendar. And although there are a few differences in the sense in the way they conceived the calendar, they still kept the 260 cycle and the longer count. So to the Aztec, for example, this was also a day of balance. But again, you had to be careful of a trickster, they said. You have to outsmart the people who want to trick on you. So be careful, start planning. Both cultures anticipated this for today, for example, and that's the way they saw the cosmos going around them. Keith mentioned that yes, they would decide on here when to plant, when to collect, and those are amazing things that you can do when you observe the sky for too long, that long. I mean, they are really, amazing in that sense. They didn't have telescopes; they just had their own eyesight, but they could pass this knowledge from generation to generation uh, in the same way that Slooh wants to pass it on to our younger users and our younger audience, and we keep, observing the sky this way. Now, I live in South America. If you skip a couple of slides, you will see that's yeah, that's the original color that the calendar would have. And this one is now taking you to Tiahuanaco. In my next slide, you will see the sun gate. The god sun is in the middle, and lots of messengers are around the sun. We are still trying to decipher what they mean, but one thing is for sure, the sun will cross that gate on special dates like this, and that's what they expected, and that's what they built, for. Because cultures like the Central and South American, after reaching an imperial stage, they worried about this, and letting people know that knowledge was what gave them their power. And with those stories, they would, conquer more than with wars. They would align the people around them. Uh, they say not conquering with a war, but with ideas, right? So that's the final message I bring for you today. It's a moment in which everybody should recalibrate, reset, and take the next stage of your year, with good vibes. Thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Milton. It was like super fascinating. I loved it. And this sun gate that we're looking at, you said they're still trying to figure it out, but do they think it's like this, like a solar calendar that's like super complex? That's like,
Yes, it's part of a bigger structure, and that's what remains buried underneath. They could only put this gate up, but underneath that flat soil, we will discover lots of other different structures. We're just sort of waiting for, enough funds, let's say, to bring all this knowledge back to the surface.
super cool. Awesome. Well, thank you again. I always love you sharing your perspective. And again, just like with Keith, I always learn something new. So this was fascinating. And, what strikes me every time I look at these sites is that, the equinox was not merely observed, but it was completely embedded into the architecture and the ritual and like the very structure of the cities, the empires, and the sky wasn't separate from life. It was life,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And I think we
Yeah.
should all consider that way, because everything that happens out there will affect our sun. I mean, our planet.
Yeah.
One idea that just came to me is that, for example, when the sun spits a solar flare, we will feel it somehow. And to the Aztec, the sun was a very crazy god, the giver of life, but it also the one that can take it away.
Right.
So they had that duality for our sun, and it's a fascinating thing to read about it and to bring it to this kind of fire around which we sit down every with every star party.
Fire. Yeah. Right. The sun and the fire. Cool. Well, it's awesome. And, it reminds us that, when we all look up at the sky, it's the same sky. It's the same sky that you watch, but that they watched, and that we're all part of the same long, long human story that continues on. So anyway, thank you,
Yes,
Milton.
I
That was
remember
very
one little
cool.
thing you
Oh,
mentioned
yes.
during this star party, Orion. And I was telling you that Orion moved to southern skies because I can see
Yeah.
it now. But to the Maya, for example, the constellation was not a hunter. It was precisely fire. It would tell the story of the fire that keeps burning. So again, maybe topic for another star party.
Oh, I'd love that. And we always want other topics, so that's perfect. Yay. Well, now we're going to move to back to Keith, who's also going to share some other folklore with us. So, Keith, I'd love to have you join us again and give us some more information about how this time was celebrated or honored or other rituals. So, take it away.
Yeah, I always like this image that Milton shares of the Temple of the Sun and that gate, that portal, because I don't know if Milton remembers, but that's where most of us were first introduced to Milton. It was on one of Dr. Mike Shaw's star parties, where Milton started sharing these pictures of how this is really interesting and everything else. And then he started showing stuff like this, stuff that he took with his own camera. And I just remember thinking, how incredible to be able to live in an area like that where you can take these kind of photographs and just, visit these. I'm sure it's not right next door, but, even within a few hours journey out into the middle of the wilderness and see stuff like this. I just think it's great.
Yeah, I
Yes, it
totally
is.
agree.
Okay, well, Milton always shares some pretty highbrow stuff with us in terms of what happened with ancient cultures. I want to share something from kind of contemporary folk culture, one that is very close to my heart, and that is the tradition of Sankey, the idea uh, of egg giving, not just at Easter. We think of Easter eggs, but this is a very, very ancient cultural tradition that exists for many Slavic peoples. How old? We have egg fragments. We don't have any complete eggs, but we have fragments with some of the designs that we still use today that are thousands of years old. So I wanted to just share a little bit about the making of Sanki and some of the patterns. So right off the bat, we see these are hen's eggs with some of the traditional motifs that we see. Uh, Drawings of animals, of flowers, mostly geometric symbols that we see in embroidery in Slavic peoples. So we see this combination of folklore imagery and also embroidered imagery. Uh, Different colors, red being the blood of ancestors, not just the blood of our Lord for Easter, but also representing the blood of ancestors. The interesting thing about Sankhya is they are not painted. They are written using a stylus with wax. So everywhere that we see a color, we use wax to cover it up. So we move from light to dark. White would be the first color. So everywhere that you would see white would be covered up with wax. Then you would move to yellow, and then that would be covered up with wax, and the final color, red, would be the final dunking. And these are dunked just like you would dunk a regular Easter egg, with the exception of each successive layer being covered in wax, which is then melted traditionally with a candle. Um, we have this image here. This is kind of a great image because, what do we think of in the spring? We are talking about the equinox, the March equinox. But for those of us in the northern hemisphere, for Slavic peoples, this occurred in the springtime. So the egg is a perfect symbol of spring, right? Of rebirth, of this idea of something static that gives life, gives new life to something else. Here we have an image of the hen, and we can sort of get an idea of what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? That age-old question. Well, the hen had to have come first because the egg, was not created. It was the hen that was created. And we see this again in Slavic art, a very stylized image of the hen. We see stars. These are, again, very common stars and sun imagery. Again, this idea of having more and more sunlight, again, followed with these beautiful, intricate geometric patterns. This particular egg is not a hen's egg. It's actually an ostrich egg. So we have three sizes. You have the small hen's egg, goose eggs are kind of in between, and this is a hen's egg. What do you do with the yolk in the middle? Usually, most people who make these poke a hole in the top and the bottom, and you just blow out the yolk. I can't imagine blowing out an ostrich yolk or ostrich white, but that is typically the way that that is done. Another example here, another ostrich egg. So we've talked a lot about balance. Milton has talked about balance, and if you watch any being in this balance, the Earth certainly being in an equilibrium where neither the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere uh, is receiving more light. We're really just starting to understand a lot of this. Milton talked about it a little bit. Uh, the effect that the sun and the moon has on people. We talk about the moon, how it influences tides, but the human body is mostly water too. So we're really just beginning to understand the way that the moon has an effect on the human body. We're certainly understanding the way that it has an effect on animals and how it affects fish in the sea and migratory birds. The Sanki also have this relationship of balance, and we see that in this egg, where it's believed that there is a balance in nature where we have everything good and peaceful, the sort of above, but below we have sort of the malevolent powers. And the creation of Sanka helps to keep this balance, keeps things in this state of equilibrium where the malevolent, the violent, the evil forces of nature are sort of kept below the surface through the making of these eggs around this time of year. So that's kind of what we see here. We're going to look at the very end of something that's more of an expression of how this power can come to the surface and what happens when it does. But for right now, most people who are writing Sanka want to keep this equilibrium in balance. More eggs. We don't just have symbols and animals. We also have here a fish. This is the carp. Carp is part of the staple in the diet of Slavic peoples, usually eaten at major feasts and festivals. These are goose eggs, again, a little bit larger. We see, again, a type of deer, symbol of strength and vitality. Wheat, a typical traditional symbol of remembrance, especially of people who've gone before us, ancestors. Stars are not always stars. It's a combination star and ancient sun symbol. This is what we see in those ancient fragments, that are 2,000 years old or more. We don't really know. And again, these geometric patterns. We see this interwoven pattern that we call a net, symbolic of the interconnectedness of all people. I think I have some more goose eggs. I couldn't help myself with these. The reason I show these Sanka is because these are all from my collection. I've been buying these for years. Typically, you don't buy Sanki. You're usually given them. They're usually given as a gift to people who are important to you, people who are close to you. Typical Sanka might make 20, 30, 40 hours to make. So this is a significant investment of someone's time. We don't see a lot of people making them much anymore. Certainly in Ukraine, that's kind of become the hub of where Sanki are made. My grandmother's sister and her daughter used to make them, but now I don't know of a single person stateside anyway who makes them. So we are kind of relegated to buying them. Other traditional symbolism here. Uh, the flower symbols and flower motifs, I forget what that is, lily of the valley, that we see was very popular in Tsarist times. Again, more different colors. I just keep showing them because I love Sanki, and they're a beautiful tradition, and we don't really think about them much or hear about them much, especially here in America. But they're very much part of Slavic culture, like I said, some motifs, traditional motifs, and again, these geometric patterns that we also see in embroidery. Very common use of the sanke is to hang a ribbon, and you hang it from an egg tree. Very common is the use of the birch. Now they're artificial. I have several of these birch trees with sanke that hang uh, from these red ribbons, and you can decorate the tree for the spring, for the solstice. Also given in this time of year, the springtime, we talk about things that happen in the spring, not just this rebirth and the world coming alive out of this deep, dark winter. It's also a time where people get married, where they have children, where they change homes. Uh, and you can think of each sanka as holding a piece of ancient culture and tradition and being linked to it. But we also have these. We have the matanka, which are these talismans, dolls that are given to newlyweds, to people that are having a child, people that are leaving one place and moving into another, to protect your house against evil spirits. We don't just ward off, evil spirits by making eggs, but also by having these talismans, these dolls. Again, very rich, vibrant colors, the black symbolic of the soil, the red, the blood of our ancestors. So, you can imagine your home being protected by something like this. The wheat sheaves, again, the signs of memory and remembrance of those who've gone before us. So, a very, very powerful symbol to have in your home. This actually is one that I just bought recently. I don't have this one yet. Kind of fearful. I bought it more as a piece of folk art, but if it's too disturbing, I may have to keep this in a drawer. But I can imagine at nighttime you might hear like a muffled, if you try and keep it stored away. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. We used to have one very similar to this one, which my mother gave to my sister, more of a doll in folk costume, folk dress that you might wear in the holidays. If you notice, the dolls don't have a face. It was believed that evil spirits could inhabit a doll if it had a face, so we don't have facial features. Instead, we have this cross pattern, which is actually that ancient sun symbol, that ancient star symbol. And we see the doll, this one in particular, decked out in traditional dress with a coral necklace and the embroidery that we saw on many of the eggs, again, the star pattern and some of these geometric patterns. So these are matanka, also given during the time of the solstice as protection of your home against evil spirits. And a very, very nice folk tradition. Uh, this was picked up by Karl Fabergé and the Imperial Russian family, where the egg tradition became these imperial eggs. This is an egg ornament. It's not, it's a different form, but we see these two. Again, lily of the valley. Remember I showed you the lily of the valley? This is a valley egg as an ornament beset with pearls and amber, which is also part of a huge part of Slavic culture. Uh, and of course, we didn't just borrow, or cultures borrow from each other, not just the egg tradition, but also music and dance. And I'm going to close with this today. You can't just really obtain sanke, certainly not now. It takes about 2 months to get them from Eastern Europe. But you can tonight take the time and go on YouTube and watch this, The Rite of Spring, this wonderful ballet reconstructed in 1987 by the Joffrey Ballet, written by Igor Stravinsky, first performed May 29th, 1913. Why do I mention this again? We see these ethnic designs, these geometric patterns, not just on eggs, but on textiles. Things are shared among both. A wonderful piece of music, probably one of my favorite pieces of music. It's been called the most important and significant work of the 20th century. It's ushered in the modern age. I'm not going to go into the specifics of what it's about. It'll take up half an hour of your time if you've never seen a ballet. Definitely watch the Joffrey reconstruction of this. Why is it reconstruction? Because the original footage was lost, right? The choreography, there's no real way to notate that. The score we have, and in fact, Stravinsky's score became a concert masterpiece, or was considered as such almost immediately. The ballet, not so much, and that's because it's a very, very modern work. But it was kind of the beginning of modern dance, and not the beginning of modern music, but it was certainly a very, very important work. Why do I mention this? Because it is the rite of spring, and the Sacre de Printemps is about what ancient cultures did during this time of year, during the spring equinox, especially. And it's a good watch if you haven't seen it before. Certainly a good listen if you've never listened to Stravinsky or listened to this piece before. Again, doesn't cost you anything. You go to YouTube and you can entertain yourself for the next half hour. It's such a controversial piece. They've actually made movies about the making of the work itself. So I wanted to end our little foray into Slavic culture with this masterpiece of ballet and of music and celebration of the folk art in Sanki and in embroidery that we have all throughout Eastern Europe, which I am. So I'm kind of here to uh, ping pong with Milton. He gets to share a little bit about his culture. I get to share about where my ancestors came from. And that was my piece tonight. So we're done. Gretchen, it's all yours.
Amazing, Keith. I love that. I absolutely love those sanki, those Ukrainian eggs. They are so ornate and so beautiful. And really loved you sharing also the talisman. So I hope that you don't hear anything coming out of your drawer. So
Those give you nightmares. They were like the black and red one. I don't have yet. The one that we had that my mother gave away was very similar to the little ethnic doll. This black and red one, I can see putting this away, and I definitely this could be like a short movie of its own where it makes sounds. You put it in a drawer, and you hear these muffled, like in the middle of the night. But I haven't gotten that one yet, so I don't know if it's going to give me nightmares or not. We'll
kind of
find out.
cracked me up a little. It was great, awesome information, and I love that you brought in Stravinsky and the Rite of Spring and the ballet, and what a fabulous thing to check out, right? For the evening.
You've
So
got you guys at home, if you're watching this live or watching it on a replay, this is something I used to listen to. 87, of course. You couldn't watch it, it was available only on videotape. Now it's on YouTube. But I used to listen to this every year. I used to save it. I love the piece so much. I would save it for the spring equinox. It's a very powerful work. It's great stuff.
I
And
love it.
now, of course, we have the reconstructed ballet. There was an addition, the reconstruction that it was better image quality. I think it was 2000 or something, 2003. So here we're looking at a star. Um, the telescopes ran is the sort of the colloquial name Epsilon Eridani. So we know two things by this. We know that it's in the constellation Eridanus, which is the river that flows through the sky, just to the south of Orion and kind of takes up half the sky. That's the Latin part of the second part of the name. Epsilon is the Bayer designation. That's the Greek letter that tells us how bright the star is in relation to the other stars that are in that constellation. Ran is the name that we kind of know it by, if you don't know the Greek and Latin terms.
Awesome. Yeah, the scopes are up there. Other ones are weathered out, right? Weather the weather. That's the one thing about astronomy. It reminds us we can't control the weather. But yay, we have this beautiful picture. And we did. Keith, thank you so much. The Stravinsky, the Rite of Spring. I had to add what a perfect note to end on. But right? A little a little punny. Anyway, I want to thank you, Keith, and I want to thank all of our guests, Milton and Dr. Emma Kane Loudon. What a journey we have taken together this evening. So we moved through the science of the Earth's tilt, the gift of the dark sky, traveling to the pyramids of the Maya and the stones of the Inca and the gate of the sun, and we celebrated those beautiful Ukrainian eggs and Stravinsky and a ballet, and of course the Ryan Gosling film, right? And all of it connected to this one moment, the equinox, right? And the enduring impulse to stop and look up and mark the turning, like Keith said, a moment in time, the turning point of the year. So late tomorrow or tomorrow morning, the moment arrives, the sun will cross the celestial equator, day and night will be equal, spring will begin in the north, autumn in the south, the earth will continue its beautiful, tilted, faithful journey around the sun. And if you're headed to the movies this weekend, don't forget Project Hail Mary opens tomorrow on the 20th, the actual day of the equinox. Story about the scientists, the stars, and what it means to look up and find wonder. And we think you will love it. And then remember, Friday, April 3rd, join us for First Friday's Community Star Party with Dr. Emma Kane Loudon and our guest, Ruskin Hartley, to learn all about the dark skies. We'll be gathering all with Slooh community from all around the world, and we'd love to see you there. Also coming up in May, May 31st brings us a blue moon. So we're cooking up something special for that night. So stay tuned. Keep your eyes out for an announcement about a very exciting art and creativity contest connected to the moon. You're not going to want to miss it. So thank you so much for either watching the replay or spending time with us this evening. To our members, we want to thank you for being part of this beautiful, wonderful Slooh community. So to everyone watching, clear skies wherever you happen to be spinning on this earth. Have a great night. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.